Okay, so we're checking out your submission for assignment 8, Squash and Stretch. I know there's a lot going on in this animation here. I've added a ground plane just for funsies, and so we can see kind of what's happening here as well. So a couple problems right off the bat. The first one is happening in translate y. Okay, so while this is squishing, it's also moving a lot up and down. Okay, so it's going up and down as it's squishing, right? And I imagine that you've done that to kind of compensate for the fact that when you squash it, it's lifting up off of the ground. Okay, you're trying to keep it there on the ground, alright? But there's actually a much better way to deal with that, so we'll go over that today. Another problem is just the fact that we've got too many keyframes going on here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 keyframes involved in the squashing, and another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for it to return to normal shape. And just to let you know, the less keyframes that you have, generally the smoother your animation is going to look. So actually in this case, less is more. The third really important thing that we need to look at is the fact that while the object is squashing, it's actually more like shrinking is what's happening, okay? Because when you have an object with a certain mass, okay, just imagine this as a water balloon, all right, full of water, and the water's not going anywhere. If you squash that water balloon, what's going to happen to the water? Is it just gonna fizzle out of existence, which is kind of what's happening here. Basically, it's just squishing down, and that volume, that mass inside, has nowhere to go. Okay, so in this case, it seems as though this item has actually shrunk. Right? You can imagine if you took this, and you tried to fit the same amount of water that fit inside of something as big as this, inside something as small as this, you wouldn't be able to fit it in there, right? So if it was a water balloon and you squashed it down, when you have that pressure, that force coming down from above, basically the water would need somewhere to go, alright, while still contained inside of this object. Just imagine that it's a stretchy object, alright, like a balloon. And what would actually happen here is that when we would push down on the water balloon, the water would then expand outwards, okay? It has nowhere to go in vertical space because it's being pressed down upon, but it will expand outwardly, okay? So, the appropriate thing to do would be actually to give this more scale in the X and Z direction, so that basically you could fit the same amount of liquid inside of this object, alright? So it hasn't lost any mass or volume, but also it's been squashed, alright? So let's go ahead and go over fixing this. The first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is actually get rid of our keys, okay? I know. Goodbye, keys. Worked hard on them. But we'll just go ahead and get rid of those guys and start fresh. Because there's a couple things that I want to show you for this. So this is where we're starting at, right? Nothing's happening, it's just sitting there. No forces are being exerted. Here comes the hammer, right? And right at frame 80, it looks like, is where this really comes significantly into contact with this object, okay? So this is where I'm going to set my first key for this object, all right? Because up until this point, it's retained this shape, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and come over here and, this is interesting. Okay, so even though I've gone ahead and deleted all those keys, it looks like we have some value information in our channel box already. Okay, our channel box here. So this has already been moved in the Y direction a little bit, and it's also been scaled in Y a little bit. And ideally, what we want is to start out with a clean slate here and kind of tell Maya that, hey, you know, this is kind of the default size, shape, position, rotation for this object, all right? And so it makes it really easy for us to just go back and place zeros and ones in our channel box to get back to this exact shape, size, and rotation. All right. So to make sure that we tell Maya that this is kind of home base, if you will, we have to come into Modify, Freeze Transformations. All right. As soon as I do that, well, actually, what would happen is that translate Y would turn to 0 and scale Y would turn to 1. But it's not going to let me do that, and that's because some of our other values are locked, alright? So in order to freeze our transformations, we'll have to unlock certain values in here, okay? So we'll do that now. We'll come to Edit, Channel Control. And it's going to bring up this big, kind of scary looking window. Basically what we're searching for here is going to be the values that are missing from this menu right here. The ones that we've locked and hidden, okay? Or maybe just hidden. So they're going to be right here, okay? Somewhere in this list, non-keyable hidden, alright? And again, we're looking for translate X, right, which is something we've hidden, and we're also looking for rotate X, Y, and Z. These are in alphabetical order, so it shouldn't be too crazy to find. So I'm going to grab all of those, rotate X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to hit this move button with these two little symbols that are pointing to the left. Okay, this is going to move them from this non-keyable hidden box over to my keyable box, and it's going to make them visible here for me to use. Okay, so I'll go ahead and hit move. There they are. This slate blue color indicates that they are still locked, but at least now I can see them. Okay, and I also have to go grab translate X. So don't forget that one. There it is, translate X. I'll move that over. So, you know, these four are all still locked at this point. I can unlock them fairly easily just by coming to this tab here that says locked, alright? I can see all of my locked channels right here displayed, okay? I can just grab all of those, rotate X, Y, and Z, and translate X. And I can hit this move button to the right, these two little right arrows, to move them to non-locked, okay? Just like that. You can see now they've unlocked here, okay? I'm going to go ahead and close that. And now I will be able to freeze my transformations, okay? So now that I've done that, I can come up to Modify, Freeze Transformations, and you can see I no longer have those values in Scale Y and Translate Y. So the reason this is so important is because once I started animating, you know, and adding values to these areas, if I want this to pop back at the end of my animation to exactly how it was when I began, it's as simple as coming in here and changing these all to zeros and the scale all to 1. Okay, and I'm going to wind up with the exact same size, same place, same rotation as where I started with this object, okay? It's very important to be able to easily return to this kind of default position. So now that we've gotten that all out of the way, now we can key this, all right? So I'm gonna go ahead and key all for this one, all right? I'm not gonna worry about locking things this time. So I'm just gonna hit S on the keyboard, all right? That's gonna key everything here. It's not entirely necessary, but you know, that's just what we're gonna start with. If we need to delete keys later, we can do that. But for now, we're gonna start like that, all right? Now, basically we know what we want to happen here is for this to squash down, right? And then pop back up as the hammer lifts, all right? Now, when we go ahead and squash this object, all right, I'm gonna come to some point in the future here, probably when the hammer is down the furthest, which looks like frame 90. Now, if I go ahead and squash this in scale Y to whatever size, you can see, all right, it's squashing the object, but also it's lifting it up off the ground here. So, you know, why is this happening? The reason that's happening is because as it's squashing towards the center, okay? So, basically everything on the top is coming closer to the center, but also everything on the bottom is coming closer to the center. And that's because that's where our handle is, alright? This manipulation handle kind of controls how an object will behave when we squash it or stretch it or anything like that, or even with rotation. And we can move this thing to different places on our object so that we can get different results, okay? So I'm going to move it, and I'm going to move it to the bottom of the object so that whenever I squash something in Y, everything is going to move towards the bottom of the object, all right, rather than everything moving towards the center. So, okay, how do I do this? How do I move this pivot point? And the answer is you want to hold down the D key, all right? D as in David. And you also, at the same time, want to hold down the V key. The V key stands for vertex, all right? Basically, the D key allows you to move your pivot point, and the V key causes the pivot point to snap to nearby vertices on your object when you move it, okay? So holding down those two keys, you get this kind of a symbol, all right? Your handle is no longer looking like it usually does, so it'll look like this. You can grab this little yellow center dot and just click and drag, and you can see it's snapping to all the nearby vertices, all right? We want to get this to sit right on the very center bottom of this object, okay? I'm a little off here. There we go. Right there. That one. Okay? And my plane is a little high in this case, so, you know, I'll move it down a little so that we don't see that poking through. Okay, but now you can see our handle is located on the bottom of the object. Now when I scale, everything goes towards this point, all right? And it's not lifting up off the ground anymore. It's just squishing downwards, all right? So this is awesome because now we can actually squish this without worrying about whether it's touching the ground. It continues to touch the ground at all times, okay? So we can just pull this down to right about there, right underneath that hammer. And, you know, it's important, again, that we don't just squish it and leave it at that because we haven't made up for all of that displaced volume. So anytime we squish it down, we also need to pull it outwards in the opposite two directions, all right? So in this case, it's going to be scale X and scale Z. So that means if this value is lower, these two are going to be higher, all right, to accommodate for that. So I'll go ahead and change these to, I don't know, 1.3. All right, and try that and see how that feels, you know, and looks looks pretty okay. And we can go ahead, and since we've changed those values, I'll grab those 3 values. These are the ones that we've changed. We haven't changed anything else. I'm just going to grab those and hit key selected. Okay? So there we go. We've got our first couple of keys. So you can see it's squishing down. And then we'll also let it come back up. Okay? So I'm going to go about, I don't know, maybe that many frames. You know, and it's just kind of up to you where you want these frames to be and how you feel like the animation looks the best, alright? And I'm going to come back and return this to its original shape, alright? And it's very easy to do now that I've frozen my transformations. I know that all I need to do is have 1, 1, and 1 in these boxes. Alright, and now it's back to normal. So I'll go ahead and grab those 3 again, key those. Okay, so let's see what we've got now. Here we go. Squishing down, popping back up. Okay. So it's getting better. Still not awesome. And part of the problem here is that although this is squishing, my hammer is kind of beating the squish animation a little bit, okay? Or it's coming pretty close to it. There's points where it's going through. There's points where it's kind of not catching up to it yet, okay? So, you know, we're getting some problems there. So that's kind of a moment to actually look at this in our graph editor and really adjust these things in the graph editor, okay? So I'm going to zoom in on this. Now, at the moment, everything's really long and stretched out, so it's kind of hard to see what's going on here and really make adjustments. So what we can do is actually hold down Command, Shift, and the right mouse button, click and drag, to bring this in. Now if you're on a PC, it's going to be Control, Shift, right click and hold, and drag. Alright? So, okay, now we can kind of see what's happening here a little more easily. Alright? Now, this is mainly to do with our scale Y. Okay, so we'll look at scale Y. We'll just click on it here, and now we can see just scale Y. Alright? So basically, anywhere you see this curve flattening out, if it's closer to flat, this is where your animation is slowing down. Alright? Anywhere you see lines that are closer to vertical, this is where your animation is speeding up. Alright, so here the object is slowly starting to squish, then it's speeding up, speeding up, speeding up, speeding up, slowing down, slowing down, slowing down, slowing down, speeding up, speeding up, speeding up, slowing down, slowing down. So obviously if it's hit by a hammer that's moving pretty rapidly, it's not going to slowly squish and then speed up and then slow down again. It's just going to go pretty consistently, just boom, just straight on without slowing down or speeding up or anything like that. So we really need to change this curve to something more like a straight line. Alright? And we can do that. We have the tools to do that here pretty easily. And so all we need to do to change this is to just grab this, okay? We could just marquee select it, just click and drag to select that. And we have this button up here called linear tangents, alright? And it just looks like a straight diagonal line. And, you know, hopefully you can guess that that's pretty much what it does. If we click on it, we get still a curve, alright? But if we grab both of these at the same time and click on it, now we get a straight line. Okay. Just forgot to grab that second one. Alright, so make sure you grab both of those. Click on that. You'll get a straight line. This will be happening at a more constant speed now. So let's see if that helps. And it looks like it does. Okay, so there we go. Now we have this moving at a more constant rate of speed. It's looking a little better with the hammer there. There's still a little bit of overlap, but overall it's doing a lot better. Okay, so that's fine. The next thing you might want to look at is, for an object to just kind of squish down and pop back into shape and just totally stop moving really instantaneously like that is pretty jarring. If something is really this squishy and bouncy, it's probably going to have some kind of little rebound effects after coming back from a squash like that. So this is where the stretch comes in, all right? So right about here, I'm going to put in a little stretch for this object as well, all right? So I'm going to go to my scale tool, and I'm going to stretch this out a bit, okay? And of course, if I pull it up, the same kind of principle applies. If I make this number larger, the scale Y, then the scale X and the scale Z are going to have to come down to accommodate for the mass of the object. So I'm going to make this thinner. Maybe not that thin. That's probably a little over dramatic. And I'm going to key that. And then I'll bring it a little further. And I will again set it back to normal. And key that. Okay? So now what we have going on is squash, back to normal, stretch, and really back to normal for real this time. Okay? So it's just a nice touch to add that little extra stretch, that little bounce at the end there, so you really feel like this is a bouncy object. And in a more complicated animation, this would actually kind of wobble around a lot for a long time. All right, so there would still be even more squashing and stretching involved, but this is good for this assignment. And that's pretty much it, really. That's all there is to it for this. Let me know if you have any questions about anything that we went over today. And thanks for watching, and happy animating.